All right. Yeah, hi everyone. So this meeting is recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. We've got a couple of agenda items. So the first one is removing policy API in 123. Mike, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so just like I sent out an email to SIG scheduling and Kubernetes dev earlier this week, we've been planning to remove the policy API since I think 119 now, and replacing it with the plugin component config. So this is, I suppose, the official announcement that we're going to go ahead and remove this permanently in 123. I think we've made a lot of concessions and work to keep it supported as we've transitioned over to component config. We've done a lot of good work around making sure that everyone has ample time to update to that. So if there aren't any major objections, just letting everyone know that this policy, which is, if you're using predicates and priorities, that's the policy API that will be removed in the next, I think that's 2 releases from now. So just as a heads up, and any feedback we linked to the issue where we can discuss it there, or any questions. So consider this the official warning that it will be removed soon. That's all that I had to say.
Thank you. And so I think you already sent an email to both Kubernetes dev and the SIG scheduling group, and we'll be updating the document, logging on the flag to indicate that this will be deprecated in 123. So we will be update that log in 122. And we will be also updating the website as well to indicate that this will be removed in 123. So hopefully that's enough, announcement to get people off of it. Hopefully everybody already moved to component config, because quite frankly, it's way more powerful, way better than the older one. So there is a lot of incentive to actually do that migration. All right, thank you, Mike, for taking the lead on this one. Any questions on this item? All right. So the next action, the next agenda item is the extended resources in heterogeneous environments. Aldo, do you want to talk about this one?
Yes. So we had Dave contributing, trying to add configuration to the balance resources plugin. And when doing the review, we discovered that when we do the scoring for this kind of resources, and you have a custom resource, for example, a GPU that only applies to certain nodes, then the scoring is correct for the nodes that have the GPU, but for any node that doesn't have the GPU, we score it lower. Which, if your pod doesn't require GPUs, doesn't make sense. So we were discussing here in this issue, what should we do about this case? Basically, there are two alternatives. You can see in the example that they have different results. One of them is basically, if your node doesn't have the resource, we top up the score for it, for that resource. And the other one is that we simply exclude it from the calculations. So they have slightly different results. So initially we were discussing whether or not it was worth changing this, but I think pretty much everyone agrees that it's necessary. So the next question is which algorithm we should go with. If you have any thoughts, please dump them in the issue, or raise your question here.
So to clarify, this is like currently the balanced, this is related to balanced allocation only, right? Or all of them?
No, it also, yeah, it also applies to the other two plugins, the most allocated and the least allocated. So it applies to the three of them.
Okay, and the default right now, we actually don't take extended resources into account at all unless someone
Correct.
explicitly configures the plugin to take one of them into account.
Yes, we don't. Mhm.
And if they do, just to try to reiterate what he says so that make sure that I'm summarizing it correctly. If they do, then an extended resource that doesn't exist on a node, if an extended resource doesn't exist on an eligible node, that node would be scored lower for the pod. Is that true?
Yes, for the pod that doesn't request
That is.
this resource.
And I just want to also add some caveats here. Like the best practice is actually not to send, not to include basically you would add taints on nodes that have GPUs, and so the other nodes that has the GPU shouldn't actually be considered at all for in the scoring phase. But are you saying that those nodes that don't have the GPU, all of them will be scored 0, or just they will be scored lower but with various things?
Right. So yes, even if you apply the best practice, the problem you face is that the scores are lower for all of them, for the remaining nodes, which implies that this score has less importance, which shouldn't be true.
Okay, so that's the problem. Like if someone already uses the current configured implementation before the fix, is that there's still a path to get reasonable behavior, but we are watering down the value of that plugin, of that scoring plugin.
Yes.
Any questions from others? If you have any you want to get a better understanding of the issue.
I have a question on this feature. So does this is an issue that for a pod which doesn't require GPU, but because of the GPU plugin, so in the scoring phase, then the node without GPU support will not get selected. Is that the issue?
So there is less chance for it to be selected because the score is lower.
So there's less chance. Okay. So I'm thinking, for a workload or for any workload, right? Either as pod or scale set or whatever. If it doesn't report a resource, right? Then scoring for that should not be scoring, and then scoring should not consider that resource, right?
Yes, that's what we are proposing here.
Okay, I see.
And also we need to take into account whether the pod is actually requesting the resource or not. I don't know if that should factor into the scoring.
Well, if it's requesting the resource, the node that doesn't have the resource wouldn't pass the filter.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're right.
So that's not an issue.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, you're right.
So if we assume that the best practice is to have taints and tolerations, then I think the best solution is to simply ignore the resource completely, right? The resource that this node doesn't have. So that we have the same behavior as if only we were looking into CPU and memory.
Right.
But this only apply to the workloads or the that doesn't require that resource, right? For the workload that requires the resource, either it's GPU or BPU or whatever special resource, we still need to consider
Yes,
scoring.
so that's
Okay.
not a problem, because if the pod requests the resource, the nodes that don't have it
Will be
won't
filtered
have
out,
the
right?
filter. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
And the
But
scoring works correctly.
Okay. Okay, will be filtered out. And then, but does the scoring consider, like, for example, if a pod, it needs GPU resource, does the scoring consider like what is available GPU on that node, on the node, consider that, for example, for a node that, has more GPU, we're going to give it a higher score.
Right, so there are 3 different scores. One of them prioritizes the higher the nodes that have less usage, currently have less usage. That's the least
Least
allocated.
requested. Okay.
Yeah, the other one,
Opposite,
that's
right?
the same for most allocated, and the other one tries to keep a balance between all the resources.
Yeah. Okay. I see. Yeah. I remember that. Okay. So, but when we consider either it's least or most or balanced, but there are 3 types of here. For example, here we listed 3 types of resource, right? CPU, memory, GPU. There could be more types of resources,
Yes.
right?
So
How we consider this? For example, one node might have more CPU, but less GPU or less memory, and another node has less CPU but more memory, more GPU. How do we normalize this?
Yes, so we take into account the percentage of usage.
Percentage of usage.
Yeah.
If they have a different percentage, for example, like the node, one node has the percentage for the CPU is lower, but the percentage for memory and GPU is higher. Another node is opposite. Just give an example. Then how do we score which one is better?
So we just look at the difference. In this case, when you have more than 2 resources, we look at the deviation, the standard deviation. Whatever the deviation is, well, if the deviation is higher, then the score is lower. If the standard deviation.
Okay, so that's the goal, is to keep a more, how to say, equivalence, right, between these different resources. Okay, to make sure we don't.
If they happen to have the same standard deviation, even though it's in different resources, we just score them the same.
Yeah, that's an easier case. But I'm just thinking if they have different percentage, one is higher, the other is lower, and then the other node is opposite. So which one? I forgot the algorithm. Which one does that current algorithm choose?
Yeah. So the other thing is that when you're configuring the least or most allocated plugins, you can give more weight to a particular resource. But the balance, we decided that they should always have, we should always consider the standard deviation for all of them.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, that makes sense. I think keeping a balance among all the different resource types, that will be good, right? We don't want to starve. Like, we still have one node still has a lot of memory, left over, but no CPU. That's not good for the utilization rate. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Aldo, for bringing this up and explaining the nuances of this issue. So yeah, if anybody has any questions about it or suggestions on how to improve the situation or which direction we should go, please comment on the issue. I think we need to fix this in this cycle. I think this is important. Okay, so that's the only 2 agenda items we have. Does anybody have any questions or topics they want to discuss? We have 10 more minutes until for this meeting.
I have a question. So I'm new to this group, or although I have done quite scheduling work. So if if I have an idea for, for making the scheduler better, or like maybe propose a scheduler extension, what is the process?
So I can. I think we need to update our community doc, but I can summarize it here quickly. So we start with opening an issue to discuss the high-level idea, so that we try to evaluate whether what you need, whether it exists already or not, like can be solved by existing features or not. And then we get to an understanding, well, this is a missing feature, let's move to a proposal phase. Maybe we brainstorm some ideas initially on the issue, but the next step is going to be writing up a KEP once we agree that, okay, this is a missing feature and this feature needs to be in core Kubernetes. You write a KEP, which is like a key enhancement proposal. We discuss on the KEP the exact semantics of the feature, the options, how to graduate it, through alpha, beta, GA. We pull in, other SIGs if it is related to, for example, SIG node or SIG storage. It requires some attention from them.
Mm-hmm.
This is merged. We move into implementation phase. If it is a new extension, there are two options. If we believe that this extension needs to be in core Kubernetes right away, then we again, it's open for discussion. If we believe that, well, it's not clear whether this is something useful for everybody, there is some doubts about hosting it in core Kubernetes, the other option is to have it in the Kubernetes in the SIGs repo. We have a plugin repo for SIG scheduling. Wei maintains that repo, our co-chair. We can add it there as well. So that's the general process. But I guess at this point, the first step is to open an issue, propose what you would like to see, to have in the scheduler. We can take it then from there. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So you just mentioned, so one, I'm just thinking about the result. One is you mentioned two options. One is to be extension of the Kubernetes scheduler, right? Another is you mentioned the plugin. Does that mean that plugin? Are you referring that to as a Kubernetes extension? Is that what you mean? The plugin?
Most scheduler features are implemented as plugins. So we either host we have in tree plugins, we either host it directly in tree, like it gets released with the Kubernetes scheduler with Kubernetes release. Or if we feel that this plugin doesn't belong in core, it's too niche or too specific to a specific use case that we don't feel it should be supported in core Kubernetes, you can implement it outside. There is a repo, and if you still want it to be open source, etc., you can have it. We have an external repo to host these plugins. Then what you need to do is you need to build your own scheduler to link in that plugin. If the feature is not really like a plugin, and basically you want to change the preemption behavior in a specific way, the default preemption behavior in a specific way, or change the way that we're queuing pods or whatnot, it's like something internal to the scheduler that is not configurable or cannot be implemented as plugin. Again, it has to be in core, but we need to discuss it over the issue, etc. Same thing, for example, if you want to add a metric and whatnot.
I see. Okay, so there's a specific repository for the scheduler extension or scheduler plugin, right?
If you would not for the internal ones, for the internal ones, they are available inside the scheduler package. If you go to Kubernetes package/scheduler, you're going to find a directory called framework. Under that, there is a plugin package that lists all the internal the entry plugins that come with the default scheduler. There is an external repository that hosts external plugins that we don't support as core Kubernetes. So an external one, we host it there just like because we don't believe it belongs to core and we don't want to support it long term as a core Kubernetes feature. So we give the community another option, which is more flexible. There is less bar to entry there. You host it there. Maybe you prove that it is useful enough and there's traction, and then you come back to the community, look, this plugin is being used frequently. We've agreed on its semantics. Let's try to merge it back into core.
Okay,
So
got it.
it's like a place where we're not quite sure whether this should be in core or not, or it's too complicated, or it's like a staging,
I see. Stage. Do you mind, because I don't know that position. I know the scheduler framework, the Kubernetes scheduler, the code, but that one which is not the core plugin. What is a link to that? Do you mind attaching that link to this meeting?
I will add it to the meeting agenda and ping us on the Slack channel. Ask the same question on the Slack channel. Scheduling. And Mike, Aldo, and others who are leading the SIG and Wei and myself, we can answer all these questions there as well. And there are other contributors who have, contributed plugins to that, so people can answer questions as well there.
Okay, I see. I just see that Aldo posted that plugin. Is that the external, the non-core plugin, right? Is that the one?
Sorry, what was the question?
I mean, in the chat window, I see that, someone called, I think Aldo, I hope I pronounced the name correctly. Yeah, posted a link. Is that the external plugin, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the repo.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I have a question about the Trimaran load-aware placement plugins, the target load packing and the other one. Is anybody here one of the contributors to that?
The main contributors for that, I think, were Wei and some people from our team at Red Hat, Asser and Chen, which I don't think are on the call right now, but I work kind of with them. So if you have like a general question, I might be able to help.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to ask about like what is the current status of like where is it deployed in production today, and what is the scale that they've reached? We are trying to do something similar at Uber, and I just wanted to get in touch with them and just bounce off some ideas.
Yeah, so you could ask around in the Slack, but I know as far as production, like Abdullah was mentioning, that's obviously in the external repo, so it's not shipped with Kubernetes. But we are doing some work with OpenShift to try to support those, and we might end up getting some usage information about seeing those deployed at scale in like the next couple of releases. It's still kind of early, but that's a good question to ask. If you ping Wei, he leads the scheduler plugins repo pretty much, so he's had a lot more detail about those than me.
And I should do this on Slack. Okay, I can.
Yeah, the Slack, the SIG scheduling Slack channel is a great way to reach us.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great, thank you everybody for a very good discussion today. Any final thoughts? We have a couple minutes. All right, thank you so much. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Bye.
You.